Excellent. Well, so as Trevor says, I'm going to do just a really quick recap on NPF4 and what it says about biodiversity and nature, talk you through the agenda very quickly, and say a little bit about some of the work underway behind the scenes to support delivery in practice. So to step back just for a moment, I'm sure you're all aware, securing positive effects for biodiversity is one of the 6 statutory outcomes for our NPF, and that flows from the Planning Scotland Act 2019. Of course, all of the policies work together to help us achieve this aim, and we can just illustrate that by sort of thinking of Policy 1, for example. When considering all development proposals, significant weight will be given to the global climate and nature crisis. And of course, that's a really big shift from SPP, NPF3. All the usual suspects come into play, for example, Policy 4 on protecting and enhancing natural heritage, Policy 5 on soils, 6 on woodland, forests and trees, etc. And it's worth also just mentioning actually Policy 14, for example, on bringing nature into the design and layout of our city, towns, streets and spaces. But of course, the focus of today is on Policy 3, which, if you like, is where the heavy lifting is done. So again, I'm quite sure you're all familiar with the layout of the NPF4 policies by now. You'll find the policy aims in the top left-hand corner. And obviously, Policy 3 aims to deliver positive effects for biodiversity, reverse biodiversity loss, and strengthen nature networks. So nature networks are embedded throughout Policy 3. Policy 3 is also underpinned by the mitigation hierarchy, and that's a theme that some of our speakers will come back to today. So first avoiding, then minimising adverse effects before considering enhancement. We also give priority to on-site over off-site enhancement, but recognise that there may be circumstances where the best outcome is perhaps through looking at off-site opportunities. And then just in terms of the structure of the policies, so the most stringent requirements are targeted at national, major and EIA development, and we can see that through Policy 3B. And then there are separate provisions for the majority of local development, and that's in 3C. And we've got the general provisions in Policy 3A and 3D, which apply generally to all development. And so that's really just giving us our rough outline for today. We've tried to give you a bit of a canter through different aspects and elements that feed into Policy 3. So kicking off next with Brian Eardley from the Scottish Government Biodiversity team, who will be updating you on nature networks. We're going to start by focusing on local development with Simon Brooks from Nature Scot, who's been leading work on the Developing with Nature guidance that supports Policy 3C. Then moving on to Dr. Caroline McParland, who is the Technical Director at WSP and also Vice President of SAIEM. And finally, Matthew Hay from Bidwells is going to bring some of this to life and give a little bit of colour and real life flavour to talk us through thinking underway in Perth and Kinross Council around the Riverwoods approach. So really, hopefully a stimulating and packed agenda. And then finally, so as I said, there's some work underway within the Scottish Government. We have a commitment to publish further guidance. We've brought together a technical advisory group to inform that guidance, and that's comprised of SAIEM, RTPI, the Improvement Service, Nature Scot and Heads of Planning. And we're grateful to colleagues from East Ayrshire, Falkirk, Aberdeenshire and Highland Councils. We're also really grateful to all of the guest speakers today, most but not all of whom are drawn from that group. To date, the Technical Advisory Group has co-hosted a roundtable discussion on off-site delivery of biodiversity enhancement, and you can see the outputs from that on the Transforming Planning webpage if you follow the links to NPF4 and delivery. As I say, we're working on guidance and hope to have that published around autumn this year. The advisory group has also been tasked with identifying opportunities for skills and capacity building to support delivery, and we continue to work with all the delivery partners and of course in particular with the improvement service and with HOPS. On metrics, I know there's a lot of interest, and some of you might be aware that there is research underway looking at options for a metric or other tool for measuring biodiversity. Now, NPF4 doesn't require a metric to be used. It doesn't require a particular methodology or assessment approach to be used to demonstrate biodiversity enhancement under 3B. And certainly where you have an EIA that's provided, we'd expect the EIA is well versed with identifying and making judgments on the likely significance, both positive and negative, of impacts, including on biodiversity. And Caroline will come back to that theme in her presentation. As I say, there is research underway, and we hope to be able to say a little bit more about that in due course. And in the meantime, would encourage everybody to stay up to date via the Transforming Planning web pages.